Your next iPhone or Google Pixel is probably going to cost a lot more, or at least a substantial amount more. Now, last night, Trump enacted what he calls retaliatory tariffs against US trade partners that have a big trade imbalance. Now, in this video, I'm gonna break down what some of those tariffs are, how they might affect you, what my experience is living in a country that already has extremely high tariffs, and I'm gonna do my best not to get super political talking about Trump and just kind of more what I assume he is trying to do. And yeah, I'm sure this video is going to piss a lot of you off. But as many of you guys know, you probably woke up to the news that there are huge trade tariffs. This is something that has kind of affected me personally, and we're going to get towards that towards the end of this video. But the good news, sort of, is that these tariffs don't seem to affect semiconductors from Taiwan. So it's not likely that your next CPU or GPU made by TSMC is going to get a huge price hike, although there will probably be some price increases to that stuff. I don't expect that to be major. There's a 26% jump in tariffs of stuff coming out of India. So a bunch of the components and some Apple products that are manufactured in India, Apple's going to be paying 26% more of that. Vietnam, the place that I currently call my home, has a 46% jump in tariffs because Vietnam is the third biggest offender in regards to having huge trade imbalances with the United States. And I will talk a little bit about what my personal experience is with that stuff towards the end of this video. It is worth noting, though, that 90% of Apple watches are assembled in Vietnam or have Vietnamese components. So you're likely going to see an increase on your next Apple Watch. 20% of iPads are made or assembled in Vietnam. So it's likely that your next iPad could be significantly more money. Analysts are kind of saying that overall you could probably expect a 6 to 10% increase in the cost of your iPhone. So a $1,200 iPhone is going to be 10% more, another 120 bucks. So your $1,100 or $1,200 iPhone is likely going to be $1,300, $1,400 after tax, depending upon what state you live in. And there is a 34% increase in tariffs of Chinese-made goods. So across the board, Trump is hitting all of our international trade partners with significant price increases, and American consumers are likely going to feel the brunt of that. From my understanding, or as someone that lives outside of America, his reasoning for doing this is because the US spends a lot of money to protect trade partners like Vietnam from China. There have been multiple incidents of Chinese Coast Guards or Chinese Navy ramming Vietnamese fishing boats, encroaching on water, on Vietnamese fishing water rights, or the rights that Vietnam has to parts of the South China Sea. There have been multiple reports of Chinese boats sinking Filipino fishing boats, and the U.S. is kind of, or the U.S. presence is kind of one of the few things that stabilizes some of that stuff in Vietnam. In Vietnam, if I want to bring in something from America or something in from China, I have to pay 30 to 40%. American-made cars in Vietnam had a 64% tariff. So if you want to get a $50,000 Ford Explorer here, you're going to pay an extra 64% tax on that. Now, here in Vietnam, the Prime Minister of Vietnam has cut the duties and the import tariffs that Vietnam charges to US natural gas from, I think it was 6% to 2%, cut tariffs on US imported cars from 64% to 32%, which is still really high. And then ironically enough, Vietnam is a huge importer of chicken thighs and chicken legs from America. Go figure. As someone that lives in a country that is developing really fast with a ton of domestic manufacturing, the only reason why there is much in the way of domestic manufacturing here in Vietnam is because of these protectionist trade tariffs that the Vietnamese government has enacted to promote domestic manufacturing. Now, it's worth noting that those tariffs have been here in Vietnam for a while, and so the industries have kind of developed around that. A lot of the industries that Trump is putting these tariffs on are already well-established industries. And so what that means is that for the most part, American consumers are going to feel the brunt of that as more and more manufacturing shifts back to the United States. I don't know if I support or not support Trump's tariffs because I see how tariffs have helped a developing country like Vietnam. At the same time, I do think that this is going to hurt a lot of American consumers. And as of last week, I just quit this job, but I had a live streaming job selling tea on TikTok in America. And I'm really happy I left that job. Part of the reason that I left that is that it was a commission-based job, and I saw that it was going to hurt American consumers, and I didn't want to personally feel the brunt of that on my paycheck because sales were down. So I left that job to teach English part-time and take my own YouTube channels more seriously. I guess you could say that's kind of my insider knowledge. I still talk to people that work at that company, and it seems like already as of today, sales are down. So this is definitely going to hurt American consumers. In the short run, for sure, this is definitely going to hurt American consumers because the price of a lot of stuff is going to get jacked all the way up on any imported goods. And unfortunately, how do I say this politically, but American consumers have for a very long period of time benefited from cheap labor overseas, and at the same time, other countries around the world that America's presence benefits, and you might sound off in the comments whether or not you agree with this or you don't agree with this, but as someone that lives in a country that benefits from that American presence, America spends a lot of money on that stuff. And what we get in return is high tariffs on imported American goods here in Vietnam. So I certainly understand why this is happening. I personally, as a proud American, would love to see the Vietnamese government drop all tariffs on US imported goods because that would kind of be fair. And I wish that Vietnam and America could be trade partners and not have not have tariffs on imported goods. But I certainly see why this is happening. I don't necessarily agree with it. I don't necessarily disagree with it. I see both sides of this, and I don't really have a dog in this race. I sold all my stuff and I moved out of America, or I should say, I moved back to Vietnam from America after spending 9 months in America because I didn't love living in America after 9 months. And many of you guys that follow this channel know that I've lived in Vietnam for a while. Và tôi có biết nói tiếng Việt, and I speak Vietnamese, and I have a Vietnamese wife, and I'm lucky enough to have permanent residency here. So unfortunately, your electronics are probably going to go up. Certain components, definitely phones, are going to go up. I'm lucky that the price of my stuff won't go up, and that's that. So let me know what you guys think. I'm sure the comments are going to be a very interesting place. I'm going to make some of my favorite popcorn with salt and vinegar, olive oil. Not really a big butter, salt guy for my popcorn. And I'm going to enjoy the comments.